One. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Ann Smith. This is Iron Sharpens Iron Council, a ministry dedicated to uplifting humanity. Whew, got through it. Okay, so I'm back with Trey to do a more deep dive into fighting the right. We have been fighting the wrong people. Okay, the wrong battle, so to speak. And it was intentional. It was intentional, confusion, and we're thinking that we're fighting CPS. No, 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 no. She's here to do a deep dive into the hierarchy and the correct way to unravel any family court case. And really, it applies to anything, but we were specifically discovering these malicious, intentional state of confusion by deep diving into CPS, but it applies to everything. But she's gonna break down the hierarchy and all the technical details of the of getting back our children and getting back our control of these renegade court systems. So take it away.
Okay, so just to kind of break down who these people are, what they want from you, and why. So, there's a lot of people out there who understand how to read the statutes, the codes. They know the applicable laws. It's not really what the scope of this is. It's not meant to give legal advice, but it's just educational to help us understand what these services are, why they exist, and who exactly is the man behind the curtain, per se. I guess that's the best way to describe it. So to get into like a point A to point Z, how they begin it, where it starts, where we end up into these courtrooms is kind of important, because it's not really just applicable to CPS cases. This is applicable to every case. So I'll kind of go over a brief of what it is that they're doing and why, and then I'll get to the technicality of, the hierarchy, where it starts and how they get what they want. So it all begins with what is called human subject research, okay? Human subject research is basically anything, anytime, from any person who asks you for any personal information. So a lot of times when we think of human subject research, we think about it from being like some sort of medical, biological perspective, and that's not the case. Human subject research is really just anyone who is investigating something about you. So if they're looking into your thoughts, your mind, when they're asking you who you are, identify, things like that, it also means that they are conducting an investigation on a human subject. And the reason you're a human subject is because the information that they gather then goes to research. How do people behave emotionally, socially, psychologically? When you go through trauma in your life, how does the outcome of your life after 35 look if you had been abused, if you had been abandoned, if your parents were alcoholics or whatever? And that's really the bottom line goal or mission that all these people have. So when they conduct these research-based studies, in order to do that, they need to have investigators that learn as much as possible about you so that they can get good data for an empirical study. And that's basically what the birth certificate is for. It's like a certificate of assurance that they won't discriminate against anyone when providing these particular services. So that gets into the Bill of Rights. So this is kind of hand in hand. The Bill of Rights is supposed to be protecting you from these types of invasions of privacy, impairments, things like that. But to further that along, they also created a report called the Belmont Report. And that particular document is how they're supposed to conduct these research projects scientifically with ethics. So in order for them to research a subject, they have to have the subject fully informed consent. Without it, then the project cannot be funded, and the counties, municipalities, and so forth cannot participate. So in order for them to be able to participate in what is called a demonstration project or program to receive the federal funds, they actually have got to first make sure that they can demonstrate on the record that the human subjects they're gathering this information for fully understood what their use and purpose of the information was, but also furthermore understands that what's going on around them, you know, when you get approached by one of these investigators, is all because you volunteered. So the reason that's important is because we have misunderstood what a volunteer really is. So most people believe that a volunteer is somebody who willingly participates in a certain event or whatever. They're not using that definition. The definition that they're using is under the maxims of equity. So what a volunteer really is one who does not offer consideration for a benefit that they will knowingly will be receiving or have received. So if someone offers you a service, such as a psychological service, a correctional service, there must be consideration because these people gave you their professional assistance to educate you in that particular field so you could correct your behavior and do better in life. That's kind of the whole surrounding of it. How do they know that what they're applying to you is going to better your life? Well, because of the empirical studies we just talked about. So they collect all of this information about you, and it gets sent to the universities and to the National Institutes for Health, National Institute for Justice. These institutes then have all of their professionals, people with a higher level of knowledge, that will oversee a pool of information from several different participants. A lot of the times, those participants, that pool doesn't identify you specifically, but it's just general information that they've collected through the Census Bureau. And now these professionals can analyze that information to determine and predict the type of behavior that you will have in certain circumstances that they're studying. And then they use it to do what is called better outcomes. So, for example, the Department of Justice, through the Justice Institute, what they are trying to accomplish are better outcomes in court cases, in legal dealings with human subjects, in legal matters. And that's why they produce legal journals and things like that. This is where they're gathering their information from. And if you think about it logically, when have you yourself ever, or known anyone around you to have ever participated in such a study? Never. So when did you ever get to put your little vote on the census report? You know, when did somebody come to you and ask you what you thought, what you felt about anything at any time? And how many people around you have participated in a questionnaire of such? They haven't. And that's because it's being done through the legal system and the medical systems from behind the scenes. So if they are doing a study to see how a human will behave if their parents abandon them, they will now surveil that child for the next, say, 30 years. And the professional scientists, you know, the psychologists and all of them, will receive data every time that child is involved with a medical professional or a law professional. They'll receive all that information to say, okay, well, X amount of abandoned children had X amount of involvement with corrections. They've had X amount of involvement with depression. And then that way they feel that they can apply some sort of solution to that problem by providing you additional services, such as psychology services, medication services, you know, all those different things. And that's really the bottom line to the whole purpose.
To summarize, guys, this is a huge, huge breakthrough. They are using, I just want you guys to get this, for everyone, you know, who's within the sound of my voice, they are using the legal system to conduct non-fully disclosed consent of, human studies, human behavior studies behind your back, basically. So that's just to put it in a nutshell. This is what's happening. So that's why we are going up against the wrong people. So that's why the sense of despair and the sense of overwhelm and confusion and, just fighting a losing battle is because you were set up from the beginning. It was set up for you to lose. Okay, they are using the court system to conduct all of the data that is run through the court, through each one of our cases, is a human behavior study. We are pulling the curtain back and revealing the truth. And with this revelation, we're going to win. We just need all the people to understand that this is what's happening. So I just wanted to kind of just take a breather and just summarize it really quickly. Go ahead.
Yeah, and not to confuse what they're doing. So in their weirdo minds, they don't believe that they're trying to set it up to make you lose, per se. What they believe is that they cannot get honest scientific conclusions if they were to disclose that they were conducting this kind of research. They need you to be in your natural state of mind and in your natural environment in order for them to get an honest, scientific-based study. If you knew they were studying you, you would definitely not behave the same way. You would do things a lot differently. So in order for them to get the science correct, they have to act, and that is why all these people are literally defined as state actors, because they really are acting. Right. It has nothing to do with law and reality, and it's more to do with natural law and their study of the natural behavior of man when under pressure, when put into certain circumstances.
It's once they've a double-blind study.
Right, and then once they've conducted this study and they complete it, they can now produce some sort of therapeutic method or service in order to better you from what they've learned in the past. And this is how they perceive it as being equally balanced scale of justice. So because we did all the hard work, because we had to deal with all the oppression, it will benefit the future generations because the science that they've collected will help people in the future so that they don't have to go through abandonment issues or drug issues. And that's kind of the whole purpose behind it. You make your own mind up if you think it's good or bad or ugly. That's up to you. I have my own opinion. I won't impose upon you. But that's just basically what they're doing. It's empirical data studies through the census so that they can gather all this information, but at the same time, they also use it as if it were your vote. So if all people go into a courtroom and each, say there's 100 people, 1,000 people, whatever, they blew a stop sign, and the cop pulls you over, and all 100 people go to court and admit they were wrong by signing a plea, it means that now we have conclusive science that these people had a guilty mind, that these people all believe that blowing a stop sign is in fact wrong. So now we can legislate that. Now we can go ahead and write a bill that punishes people for blowing that stop sign because we got the vote. You know, they don't take into consideration a gun was held to your head. They don't take into consideration that the guy who pulled you over was committing a felony when he did it. You know, they don't take into consideration that when you get to the courtroom, you never have an opportunity to defend yourself properly with due process procedure. So this is how they develop legislation in regards to these types of matters. And it really falls under the Department of Education, not really so much the Department of Justice. Now, the Department of Justice, yes, they do conduct the studies to come up with better outcomes as to how to beat you. That's really what their study is for. When you find a loophole in a law, or when you are able to beat the system in some sense, you know, you come up with something that is applicable, they then study that case to determine how they can prevent another you from coming in and throwing a monkey wrench into their plan. That's what the Department of Justice does. So these are just, like I said, basic, foundational, real simple, keeping it simple. It goes a lot deeper than that, and I encourage everybody and anybody to study, especially when it comes to the National Institute for Health and the National Institute for Justice, because that's really kind of the foundation of the whole facade. Through the universities, your states of, now, as many times as people talk about the definitions of the United States, there's a certain definition that kind of struck me, where it talks about if you're in the jurisdiction of the United States, it means you're within the several states. I do believe, and I can't really prove this, but, something for someone else out there to study, is that when they say you're within the jurisdiction of the several states, that they're actually speaking about the heads of states. Department of Health and Human Services, Department of, Justice, all of those are considered heads of state. And they're typically the ones who are writing the legislation that we deal with day to day within these statutory courts. So I believe that that's what they're actually saying when they talk about the several states.
Okay.
So just kind of an overview, like I said, of how it works. And then now to get a little bit deeper into when it all happens and how it happens behind the scenes to get you into this position. So typically, when we go to courts, especially in family courts, we get a guardian ad litem. If you're in the traffic courts or something in that nature, you get like a public defender. Either way, you're getting some sort of appointed attorney. And most people understand that when that occurs, it creates a power of attorney that they possess over you, so you can't speak in the court. But the thing is, it goes super further down, deeper into a hole that just unimaginable stuff that they can get away with by taking that power of attorney. So just to kind of go over, I was working on a CPS case that you did the videos for, and, this is in the state of Tennessee specifically, but for the most part, every state is going to be at least similar to the way that they have their system set up. So what we found is that when we go into the court, the very first thing that the court does is they establish a fiduciary duty of care. And what that really means is that you are working in a kind of a professional occupational position that is governed by a certain type of policy, and that you are required to follow that policy. So that's kind of what it means to have a fiduciary persona, and those policies are written basically within the statute. So if you are in a CPS case, a family law case, and you're using the Juvenile Act as an example of that, first thing they do is they establish a relationship of parent and child. And that is a decree of the court to prove or to show on the record that you have a fiduciary duty of care to the child. So now, instead of being mother or father, you become parent. You're wearing your parent hat. And this is the same thing as if you think about like a nurse. A nurse is on the street, somebody's choking and they die. She did nothing about it. Well, she was in her personal capacity. She didn't have to. So if she's at the hospital and someone's choking and they die, she was wearing her professional hat as a nurse, and therefore her fiduciary duty of care was still present at that time, and therefore she's in breach of that fiduciary duty. So this is why they established parentage, is because by your own consent, when they establish you as being a parent, it means that the statute, if you look at it closely, the statute specifies that it deals with parents, okay? So what kind of parents does the statute deal with? There are regular old everyday parents that we know about. There are custodial parents. There are non-custodial parents. There are acting parents. And missing one. There's one more, but
Legal.
now you get the point. So when one acts as a parent, okay, this means that you are responsible for all the needs of the child. And this also means you are responsible if the child is harmed or neglected or whatever. So if you'll notice when your cases, and you go back and look, only one person in that entire room has been established a fiduciary duty of care. and that's mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is a choice. So the court could establish the acting parent role to the CPS worker or the guardian ad litem, but they don't, and that's deliberate. So the only person who really is responsible for the child's well-being in that room is you. And now you have all these agents who take this child, put them in a foster care home, or they put them with a foster family. But the foster family by law is actually defined under the Social Security. They are defined as a state employee. So they also have something you don't, indemnity and immunity. So if the foster family doesn't establish a fiduciary duty of care, and typically you'll find that the orders don't give them any custody at all, so now they have no real law protecting the child from the foster family themselves. The only person that child is protected from is you. And if you're the only person actually trying to protect the child, there's nothing you can do because the foster family or foster facility have immunity and indemnity. So they're provided a paid-for defense by the state far superior than the one you'd ever be able to pay for if they do get caught up abusing the child. And you want to take them to court, it would be years. Your children would age out before you were ever able to save them from an abusive foster family. And you would have probably by that time gone broke trying to fight them because their entire case is covered. Like they don't have any liability really. Now this also is the same ordeal with the agents. They do not define themselves as having a fiduciary duty of care. So if they say in their advertisement, we protect children from abuse, in a perfect world, what it should say is that we only protect children from abuse from mothers and fathers, because their intentions are not to protect these children from foster care facilities or from foster families or from themselves or officers of any sort, and that's deliberate. So now that they haven't established that particular duty of care, what happens in the courtroom is once they've taken possession of the child, they could pretty much wash their hands of you, but they don't because they know it would look funny. So after they have possession of the child, they no longer are obligated to protect the child from harm. And because of that reason, they really literally could just discard you because now your power of attorney has been submitted to your appointed attorney, and the guardian ad litem has power of attorney over the children. So he can make decisions in any nature form that he desires on behalf of the children, and he never, ever is required to tell you about those decisions he made. He doesn't have to send you notices about anything that's changed, and all of this is utilized in order to brokerage services to your family so they can get grant funds. So the way I see it is that this particular court is nothing more than just a service brokerage firm. They qualify you for grants that will provide you with a professional service of people that are within their own group, their own category. So now these services are paid for through the Fed, and you'll never know that they qualified you and your children for these types of programs, again, because of the power of attorney. They don't have to tell you. So what I'm looking at right now, if anyone's in Tennessee can look at it, or you can find it in your own state, is Title 34, Guardianship, Chapter 6, Power of Attorney. So the trick to this is when you look at the juvenile code, it doesn't get into detail about who these people that are working with you, like who they are or what they do or what their duties are. You have to go digging for it, which is very time consuming and very complex because most parents don't know how to look for it, where to look for it, or what to look for. So each individual, we had to find out what is their part in all of this? What do they do? So if you look at the orders, a lot of times it says when the court takes jurisdiction that they will give legal custody to the CPS. That does not mean physical custody. Okay, so if they take physical custody, it is because of the power of attorney behind everything. not because they had the right, because I can tell you now, you look through any juvenile act, it does not grant a right to CPS to take possession of the children. And where a statute does not grant a right, then no right can be afforded. Okay? Now, if you understand anything while you're going through this, the very first thing you should really learn about is statutory construction and understand how the statutes are written and what the requirement for a legitimate statute is supposed to look like. This is probably long before you ever deal with anything outside of that, because we first have to establish, are we subject to the juvenile code? Are we subject to the traffic code? How do we know? Personage. So we have to figure out, they're calling us a parent. Do we qualify as a parent? How? When did that relationship get set up? And who exactly writes the rules for a parent or a driver or whomever? Mm-hmm. So this brings me back, like I said, to the fiduciary duty, occupational fiduciary duty, because these people are operating under public law, and they are operating on behalf of the public, and they talk about how their job is to protect the public interest. And we presume that we are the public. And in a sense we are, but not as deeply as they want you to believe. So if we talk about who the public is, it is any corporate body politic, basically. So an agency, institution, all of them are considered the public employers. So they employ a bunch of people in the public to protect the public trust. And then you have your agents, agencies, so forth, and all the different individuals inside of there. And what is the protection that they're trying to provide? Well, it's insurance. So if you receive insurance policy from some entity, it does technically make you a member of that particular entity or organization. So if we look at the Social Security, what do they provide? Retirement insurance, Medicaid insurance. And so that is why the juvenile code specifically is protective, predictive in nature. They are predicting that you might hurt the insurance policy because of whatever it is they proclaim you're doing to the child will hurt the economy in the future, because that child will grow up by their conclusive science to be some sort of bad member of society, right? So it's all about that particular, that's why those statutes, if you read through them, aren't about if you committed abuse so much as it is to you might commit abuse and we got to prevent it. That's why it's risk management is basically what those courts represent. Risk management, and in order to prevent any further risk of you harming the public, we have to make sure that we educate you properly so that we can say that we did educate you, and now that you're educated, everything you do here and after means you did so willingly, wantingly, with bad intent. So this is kind of how those statutes are set up. And behind the scenes, they utilize, both the CPS agency and the police agencies utilize predictive analysis tools. The police systems is called LEADS, and then CPS, they're different from across the state. I can't even think what they're called, but these predictive analysis tools are a collaboration of computer systems that are utilized to transfer information and collect information and share information amongst the task force that is charged with the duty or mission of the organization. So, for example, in CPS is the Children's Alliance Network. Mm-hmm. The Children's Alliance Network is a nonprofit organization that has collaborated a bunch of different service providers in one place within each county so that there would be easy access to the data and information in order to provide better outcomes, because the services will all be located in one place. These are called CACs, or Child Advocacy Centers. Inside of that Child Advocacy Center is where all of your CPS investigators will be. You'll have a bunch of volunteers who might provide housing. You know, there might be some sort of HUD group in that building. There'll be someone who is good at preventing domestic violence, so all these different service providers will be in that one location. And what happens is that the county, the state, the Health and Human Service Department all come together with the juvenile court and their judges, and they sit down at a meeting and say, yeah, we want to protect all these children. How are we going to do that? So they launch what's called a demonstration project. That demonstration project is to get all that information gathered to see how we can better service this particular group of persons. And then they create a task force that is charged with that duty. And there is a contract. So for each specific county, the CACs will have a contract that shows who they've hired to do this duty. These people, this National Children's Alliance, is not a part of the government. Okay, they are a part of the education system. So they aren't like, what you would normally think of as being a governor, mayor type of situation. They're literally a private organization that hires the police forces within that community. They hire the juvenile court system to serve their mission, their purpose. And that purpose is to protect their public employer or to protect the public interest. And their public employer is the universities that are conducting the research we talked about earlier. So that's who they're really protecting. And that's the principal interest that they're actually going to work towards, as opposed to working towards the beneficiaries, which is the children. So somewhere, I'm not sure where that all got messed up, technically speaking, the grant funds are supposed to go directly to the children. But what we've done is we have passed power of attorney to them so that we never knew the children were even getting these funds. So the power of attorney comes from your voluntary acknowledgement of paternity. And if you read one, it tells you there all the things you waive. So you actually waive your right to genetic testing, not from it, to it. And that's an important statement. So when we go to court, they make us believe, well, you signed this paternity acknowledgement, and so therefore you have to take a genetic test because, well, you signed this particular agreement. But if that were the case, it would read differently. It would say that I waive my rights from taking those genetic tests if I don't want to, right? This is to it. And this brings me to the NSIGHT program, N-S-I-G-H-T, I think, or S-I-T-E, I forget. But the NSIGHT program is a hospital-based program or collection where the hospital collects your baby's biological data. So they take a little prick from the heel of the baby, they put it in a data bank, a storage bank, so that they have a piece of that baby's data with them at all times. And what happens when a guardian ad litem is imposed upon your baby, they can now give permission to the scientists to pull that data, to pull that DNA from the bank and do subject research on it. Study his blood, study his DNA, study everything about him physical, and you'll never know it happened. And big grant money comes to them because they're the ones in control or administering that particular account. So when the feds fund a program such as that, what happens is they release the money from the Federal Reserve, and that Federal Reserve money goes to a private account for the educator. These are scholar accounts. Mm-hmm. So the educator, being in this instance the Children's Alliance Network, likely has the account where they're able to administer all the funds. So the power of attorney, the GAL, says we're going to sign your baby up for genetic testing. It's worth $10,000. The feds release that money from the fund, and the power of attorney, aka GAL, now makes sure that the $10,000 awarded to the child is provided to their buddies under that network, insurance network, professional services network. That's why it's a network. So this power of attorney situation comes from this voluntary acknowledgement of paternity, because what happens throughout this process is that you now, as a mother, have told them that you don't want to handle the financial affairs of the child when it's in matters of support. So typically we're thinking a dad supports a child financially, and that is true. However, we didn't realize that the federal government provides child support to us as well in the name of grants and aid. So these grants of aid are awarded to the child, and if you didn't have a power of attorney, then you would be able to get those grant monies yourself and apply them where you wanted to apply them, to whom you wanted to apply them to. But these powers of attorney mean that you don't even know the grant's coming in, so they can take that money, and all they're trying to do is show that that money was utilized for the beneficiary, the child. So if we're doing some sort of genetic testing, it has to have a benefit to the child for some purpose, and that's all they have to do is just pretend, show that that $10,000 went to the child for his future health purposes, and then bam, they got themselves $10,000. But perhaps the service that they used because their friends gave them a discount. Perhaps, maybe, possibly, the service really only costed $2,000. The surplus now gets divvied up between them, or is cheated to the state. So everybody wins except you and except the child.
For the first time in our known history, we have uncovered the mystery and solved the confusion, if you will, and have the evidence. This goes beyond conspiracy theory and just a philosophy or an idea. The evidence is irrefutable evidence that this is happening, and this is the appropriate hierarchy that was set. The system was set up this way, but we just never knew about it. They didn't inform us, and so now we're just uncovering just this little piece. We're able to take back our power because we just have to rescind all of these power of attorney. First of all, it's adhesion contracts because it fails,
And the contracts are vague, by the way. If they don't really specify.
Void for vagueness. Yeah. And so what we have here, first of all, I will interject that, because I know that they're, my lights have been flashing and there's no storm or rain or anything like that. It's just constantly, under attack every time that we try to, come together and bring this information out. But we are determined and we want to get this information out. But I just want to say that this is a world peace mission, so that by making that intention clear that we are protected under the human rights violations. And so we are definitely a world peace mission that is above politics, above religion, and above race. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to make that intention clear so that, remember, intention is law and law is intention. So I had made my intention clear. This is a world peace mission. I have to say that loud and clear.
Right. Well, because, you could look at this from a World War perspective, yes. Being that man, by nature, we're horrible to each other. We are constantly hurting each other in various different ways and forms and fashions. I mean, that's just the nature of man, and we know it. So when we think about the one world order, one world government, if you want to get into all that stuff, and you think about what the UN does, it's to promote world peace. Well, who are we at war with mm-hmm. that we need this world peace mission to keep pushing on? It's because we're at war with each other. I think that's what the bottom line principle is that all of us people are constantly hurting each other, and in their minds, they're trying to develop some sort of cure or intervention or therapeutic something that will prevent us from harming each other in the future. So if they can just identify what causes us to do such a thing, they can apply tough love or correctional services in order to get us to stop. And that's what would bring us to a peaceful mission as opposed to the world war that I believe is really the cause for all of it. So, I mean, that's a whole other topic. But,
yeah.
So back onto the power of attorney.
Yes.
So the power of attorney under this Title 34 Tennessee Code, it explains, under Part 4 that they get to make the health care decisions for unemancipated minor children. And then if you go to 346403 of that code, it explains to you the scope of power of person standing in loco parentis in order to make health care decisions and what their limitations are. So if you look at the particular orders that the judges put out there, the first thing that they do is that they give legal custody to CPS, and then they will also say that CPS has standing in this particular personage, loco parentis. Okay? So loco parentis is really just a doctrine. I had read a case a while ago where a bunch of students in the 70s were on college campus students, and they were suppressed by the college for trying to exercise their free speech rights when they were speaking out against Vietnam War. So the children sued the college, saying that the college can't suppress their free speech just because they're on their campus. The college disagreed, but knew they would lose the case. So instead of having a Supreme Court ruling come out in favor of the students, they created what is called a consent decree, that they would assume only partial liability for the students when they do these kinds of stand-ins, because the reason they were able to act as mommy and daddy in loco parentis is because if the students do stupid stuff, the school ends up being 100% liable for the stupid stuff the students do. So this consent decree changed the overview of loco parentis. So now they have limited liability. And so that's why they give student policies to kids. It tells them, the kids, what you can and cannot get away with doing. And it educates them. They have education on how, young people drinking is bad for you and stuff like that. So they put those policies into place in order to prevent the children from acting in a way that would cause liability to the school. But because they educated the children, they provided that kind of education, now the children become liable for their own actions if it was in that policy. So if the kids go out drinking and there was no education or policy, the school would be liable. But if the school provided them with education to let them know the consequences of drinking, and the kids go out drinking and crash, they're on their own. The school's no longer liable for them because they provided them with that particular piece of education. So the local parentis standing that they're giving to CPS in order to pick up a case involving your child gives them a position of, before they even walk into the court, what they're saying is that somehow CPS is similar in nature to the university that we spoke of with these children. Your behavior is affecting or putting at risk our public, so we have to step in like mommy and daddy and prevent that risk by educating you about what you're doing wrong so that the liability can be pushed onto you and alleviated from us. Don't say we didn't tell you, right? Don't say we didn't teach you. You knew you couldn't be doing these things because we gave you classes, and therefore we are no longer liable for anything that happens to that children because of your breach of fiduciary care. And that's the trick behind it. And it's a lot, I think, for newbies to understand, but people who've been reading will get this quite clearly.
Look up Parents Patriae. Parents Patriae.
Parents Patriae and Parents, so Parents Patriae and then loco parentis. So under the loco parentis, it explains that the parent, legal guardian, or legal custodian, okay, these are three different entities. The parent, legal guardian, or legal custodian, legal custody. They had legal custody, not physical custody, okay? So the legal custodian may, but is not required to, convey in loco parentis standing to another adult if there is no order of any court in effect from any jurisdiction, including an order of protection, custody order, or parenting plan that would prohibit the parent, legal guardian, legal custodian, or the person acting in locus parentis from exercising that power. So what you're saying is the day that CPS comes to you and they accuse you of abusing your kid, that they now stand in that position, local parentage. And the reason that they stand in that position is because of the Mandating Reporting Act. Everybody's a mandated reporter. If we see abuse, we have to say something, right? So this puts them in that particular standing when they meet you, not when they get into the courtroom. They walk into the courtroom automatically with that standing. So when they meet you and they determine you're an abuser or something of that nature, they can now go ahead and convey any type of rights to the child that they've accumulated, and they can give it to the guardian ad litem, or they can give it to the foster family. So the custodian position does not remain with the agency. How do we know that? Because if it did, they would be liable and responsible after they put the kids with an abusive foster family or into an abusive foster facility. Because that's what that standing does. The legal custodian, although they're not really supposed to have the physical care, they are supposed to make healthcare decisions for the minor. And they are also supposed to make orders of protection on behalf of the minor if someone is abusing them.
Okay.
And they don't do that now, do they?
Absolutely not. The entire point of this session is to give you guys hope, to empower you to know the truth of what's been going on, what you've been tricked into believing, and just to give you that hope, that glimmer of hope that we are, fast track on their track and unraveling all the tricks and the traps that they set up for us to fail. And so we have been trying to work very hard, and we are having major success and moving towards, reuniting, children with their parents, with their mom and with their dads. So this is just a matter of, Trey here, who refused to give up. She knew she was on on this train, and a lot of people tried to discourage her from going down this path because, it is not something that it's fast or it's easy to uncover. And so she was discouraged, and I'm just so proud of how, she just would not, like a dog with a bone, man. She just would not let it go and just continue down that path. And this is where she is now. This is where we are, and we are going to fight for the truth to get out. And it's time to reveal the man behind the curtain. It is not. You're not fighting CPS. You're not even fighting the court system. You're fighting a bigger hierarchy that goes all the way back up to the educational system, okay, to NIH, and NIH even has a boss. So it is incredible. The deceptions and the fraud is very deep. But the good news is we're not here to just talk about how bad it is. We're just trying to let you know that we are basically reverse engineering, to win back our control, basically. And when we take it to them, it is irrefutable evidence. It is no longer a theory. You're not out there by yourself looking crazy and sounding, like you're just a nut job who needs, mental health evaluation. That's what they wanted you to believe. That's what they. That is what that was purpose by design. They wanted you to quit, and they wanted you to be by yourself and be isolated and look crazy and sound crazy. So we are here to reverse engineer all of this, and we're going to be publishing all of this information because that's the best way that we're going to be able to get the information out to as many people as possible. As you see, we're just two people. It's just a very small team trying to get this information out. So the best way that we're going to share this information is by means of publishing, because they can't stop that. They can't stop you from they can't stop the reports. And so we're going to get this out to as many people as possible so you can start being reunited with your families and defeat these doggone dragons. It's enough. They've run amok on the legal system enough, and now we know the truth. It's undeniable. We have the evidence, and you will be able to get the evidence, before them, and they will not be able to deny it. So that's That's the true. That's the true hope. And I'm just so glad that you quit. Because so many times, so many days, I just wanted to oh gosh, I don't know what to do with this information. But it was so good, and now we have a template, a system, a systemized manner to defeat them, and rope in all of the actors so that they're going to be held accountable from now on, because I'm not letting this go, and I know she's not letting it go. So we'll have all the links, to all the information in the description box. I just kind of wanted to just empower people. That's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do here with this information. So if you had any closing out, because we're into an hour now.
Yeah, well, all I was really going to say to top all that off is that you can locate the players in the game. You can locate the actual task force that is charged with the duty of protecting these corporate entities by and through your child, what is it called? The Children's Advocacy Centers, CACs, Children Advocacy Centers. If you go onto their website, they actually have all the little links to all the different people that they work with or collaborate with in contract. And there is a little piece called the Partner Trade Agreement. Okay, so a partner trade agreement, it comes from or in between your Health and Human Services Department and the Children's Networks and all of that. So those trade agreements will be signed by every party. The police, in this case, we found the Navy investigative team is signed up for this particular contract. I don't know, whatever. The governor, all these people sign up to this partnership trade agreement through these organizations. And that contract will give you insight as to who is involved in this private exchange of information. And that's all they do. They privately exchange information for value. And they take that information and they use it against you. And they use it against you in violation of federal rule. I think it was 803, if I remember correctly. Any law enforcement agency that develops a report, so if they accuse you of doing drugs, the chemist who gave that report to them, it is inadmissible in evidence being adversarial to the person that is in the courtroom. So, it's something you guys want to look at and want to pay further attention to, is that they can't even admit evidence into the court if it comes from a law enforcement agent. And everybody on that list is a law enforcement agent, including your hospital, your doctors, your practitioners of any sort, because of that mandating reporting act, all become officers that are conducting investigation against you on behalf of the prosecution. Doesn't matter what your case is. So it's something that you guys really need to be able to look at, so you'll have a good fight on your hands.
So, oh my gosh, I know that this was chock full of shocking information. This was a huge bombshell, drop. But when you snap out of the cognitive dissonance that I'm sure that a lot of you, especially the newbies, are going to experience, get ready to rumble and get ready to start winning. And we need the numbers, okay, because they are organized and now we are too, okay? And so we're going to start winning, and we're going to take this country back. We're going to take the courts back. We're going to take the government back. And starting with each of our individual cases, one by one family, one household at a time, we're going to take back control. And that's pretty much all. What's my driving force, basically. I just cannot sit down knowing that the liars are winning and the false evidence is winning, because this is what's happening with each and every case going on, including my own. I had a family case going on, and it was just insidious, the lies, and I just couldn't, for the life of me, figure out, well, I'm here telling the truth and I'm still losing. And $40,000 later, I'm still fighting to get the truth out. So now you see we were fighting the wrong people. So now that we have the evidence that shows, it's time to take these people to task. Okay, so that's all we have for you today. Watch this video. I'm sure you'll have to rewatch it multiple times because I know it's going to be a shock to your system to just internalize all this stuff. It is some exciting times that we are going to be embarking upon, I promise you. And we'll have all the links to all the publishing that we're going to do because really we're just two people. We can't get to everyone in every state and help every single court case. So the best way that we figured to do it is through our publishing, of our works. Okay, so I'll have all the links below. And if they're not ready when this video is published, we will, I'll circle back and add the links later on because I know that comes up too. Okay, so if you like this video, if you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell notification, sorry, my phone here, and hit the bell notification button so you don't miss an upload. Until the next time, be safe, everybody. Peace, bliss, and positive vibes only in the comments. Thank you, and we'll be back.